After dying at 78, I opened my eyes to find myself back at age 20. Given a second life, I decided to have nothing more to do with my former wife, Su Xian. Until that day, when I was chatting happily with a junior from my club, Su Xian, who shouldn't have been involved with me, appeared with a dark face. Su Exon, she's younger than your granddaughter, and you're going after her. Me. At 7:20 a.m., I finished my morning run. The other three in my dorm were already up, because they had an 8 a.m. class. Li Tao calculated the time and said in shock, "Joey, are you crushing on some girl? You've been sticking to your morning run for 2 months." Indeed. Originally, I was the biggest sleeper in the dorm. But 2 months ago, I suddenly became exceptionally proactive, getting up for a morning run every day, stunning the other three in the dorm. I picked up my clothes to take a shower before class. Running makes a person feel energized. It's not that I didn't want to sleep, but my 20-year-old body actually housed the soul of a 78-year-old. Even my biological clock had followed my old habits, waking me up naturally around 6. So I decided to go for a run. Who would have thought that 2 months ago, I was clearly a 78-year-old man? After passing away peacefully, I woke up to find myself back at 20. At first, I also got sleepy very early at night, which meant I couldn't concentrate during evening classes. Fortunately, I gradually changed that, but the early rising remained. But that wasn't a bad thing. At 7:40, the four of us from the dorm arrived at the first cafeteria, downstairs for breakfast. I was drinking my porridge when Li Tao suddenly nudged me with his elbow, nearly sending the porridge into my nostrils. "Joey, look, your goddess is buying breakfast too," Li Tao said to me in a hushed voice. Hearing this, the three of us followed the direction he was pointing, with our eyes, as uniformly as in military training. It was Su Xian. Her white hoodie was unadorned, and her blue jeans accentuated her straight, slender legs already blessed with an enviable beauty, and with excellent proportions. Even simple clothing looked exceptionally attractive. On her, she was slowly queuing with headphones on, swiping through her phone. She seemed to be checking some information, and she held a bottle of milk in her left hand, taking occasional sips. I pursed my lips and looked away, unable to help but correctly Tao's words. She's not my goddess anymore. I look at her now like I look at a granddaughter. Su Chung was shocked. "Joe, why are you insulting her?" I was bewildered. No, I wasn't when I passed away. My and Su Xian's granddaughter was older than she is now, and due to her family's strong genes, even my granddaughter bore some resemblance to her. So seeing 20-year-old Su Xian now, it's hard for me not to think of my little granddaughter. That's right. Su Xian and I are husband and wife, the kind that was a business marriage. All smiles on the surface, but incompatible within, disliking each other for a lifetime, and arguing for a lifetime. Of course, I could never win an argument with her. I admire myself for how someone with her level of competitiveness and terminal case of being a hardcore career woman could even have a husband. The only time I won an argument was probably when I even cursed myself, saying that I would die and be free before her. Normally, she was eloquent when retorting to me. At that moment, however, Su Xen widened her eyes and didn't say anything for a long time, finally turning red-eyed and silently returning to the room. She wasn't as ruthless as me and didn't dare curse herself. As a result, the words came true and I really did die before her. Su Xen and I have a son and a daughter, 2 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, all of whom are already adults. When I passed away, they were all at my bedside, except for that heartless Su Xen. I spent over 50 years with her, and she wouldn't even come to the hospital to see me. One last time, when I was on my last breath. I wonder how she's doing after I died. Never mind her. Whether she's doing well or not, it's none of my concern. Now, when I first came back after being reborn, I secretly went to see 20-year-old Su Xian. Of course, she didn't recognize me. We brushed past each other, and she didn't even glance at me, although I had a crush on her throughout my entire college years. In my previous life, I successfully ensured that she was completely unaware of my existence. Pathetically timid, holy crap. She looked over here. I couldn't help but advise him. "Little, watch your mouth, holy crap." I couldn't help but blur it out. It's been many years since I said that, but it came out so smoothly when I ran into Su Xen. What's going on with Su Xen? She seemed to be rooted to the spot, completely frozen, staring blankly in our direction. Her eyes even seemed slightly red. Su Xian said, "I feel like she's going to cry any second now." Meeting her gaze, my heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. Although I agreed with what Su Xian said, why would she cry for no reason? Especially since she's a big name on campus. And in such a public place. I don't know if she'll cry or not. Chinjung said, pulling out a tissue and handing it to Su Jia, then taking one for himself. "But I know that if we don't head to class now, we'll be the ones crying." Li Tao yelled, "This damn early class." I looked away, not having time to think it through, and hurriedly packed up my things and left with my roommates. Luckily, I was reborn back to my college years because the experience of managing the family's company for so many years was already ingrained in my bones, which made me feel like I mastered what I learned in college with ease. If I had been reborn back to high school then there probably wouldn't have been a story to tell. After finishing the first 2 periods of statistics, the few of us rushed to the lecture hall for Mao Zedong thought class. We chose a seat by the window on the 3rd row, so we could quickly run to the cafeteria after class. The window on the right faced the campus road, where you could see rows of plane trees, with leaves that were already yellowing. It was a public course with 3 classes together, and the classroom was still sparsely populated. Even as the bell was about to ring, Lida seemed to have just remembered our topic from the cafeteria and leaned close to me, asking, "Why don't you like Su Xian anymore?" Hearing his question, I finally turned my gaze away from the scenery. Outside the window, I remembered Li Tao asking me before, "What do you like about Su Xian?" I've heard that a lot of guys have been turned down by her. What did I answer back then? Oh, I picked a simple and honest reason: she's pretty. Li Tao was instantly speechless. Being pretty can't pay the bills. I said it can't pay the bills, but it's good with rice. So why don't I like Su Xian now? Li Tao pressed. Do you think she's not pretty anymore? That's not it. Although my relationship with her wasn't harmonious in our marriage, but I have to admit that Su Xian is gorgeous in every stage of her life. But thinking back to the life we spent, tangled together in the previous life, when I went back to see Su Xian at 20, I really wondered if we would both live more comfortably, if we didn't interfere in each other's lives. This time around, I thought for a few seconds and replied, "Her heart's set in cement, and I'm cutting my losses in time." There was no white moonlight between us, no lingering feelings, and no third party. It was purely that Su Xian didn't care for romance. Her heart was harder than diamond, and colder than a glacier, unable to knock it open, unable to melt it down. Li Tao let out a laugh. What the hell? Cement-sealed heart. The class bell rang, and a wave of students came in. As the sound echoed, I casually lifted my gaze towards the door. In my line of sight, it was easy to spot Su Xian's tall figure. Her gaze also swept across the row of seats, and finally met mine. But in the next second, she was pulled, along by her roommate, towards the back of the classroom. I slightly turned my head to look at her departing figure. I saw her release her roommate's hand, and then slowly bring her hands holding a textbook to her back. What is this confusing feeling of being both young and mature? For a moment, I truly felt like she was the older Su Xian, possessed by a spirit. The teacher on stage had already started the lesson, so I turned my head back and focused again. It wasn't until the break that I picked up my thermos, opened the lid, blew on it a couple of times, and took small sips. I had bought this thermos not long ago, and my dorm mates teased me about a college student carrying a thermos everywhere. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed someone walking to my seat, casting a shadow over me. I looked up. My hands shook, and I took a big gulp of hot water, burning my tongue. I tried to suppress the urge to stick my tongue out, to cool it down, and looked at the person in front of me, with a mix of annoyance and confusion. I didn't understand why Su Xian was standing in front of me, staring at me intently. Throughout our college years, we hadn't interacted at all. My tongue was a bit numb, so I asked her classmate, "Is there something you need?" Su Xian's eyes seemed to flash a hint of disappointment, but quickly masked it. She lowered her gaze and took something out of her pocket, placing it on my textbook. "You dropped your meal card. Our school's meal cards have personal information and photos on them. I probably dropped it in my rush this morning." Without noticing, I thanked her, but she didn't leave, seeming to wait for something. I expressed with my eyes, "Classmate, do you still need something?" Su Xian bit her lip and in silence turned and left. "Wow, Joey, It looks like you really don't like her. Your attitude was so cold just now, Li Tao commented. I felt my cheeks flush and my heart race. Completely. Unlike how one should react upon seeing a goddess. What coal? I couldn't help but refute. I was clearly polite when I thanked her. Lit Tao. Is that really the main point? I put away the meal card. Pressed my right hand on my left chest. Feeling my heartbeat beating faster than usual. It's impossible to really manage. A complete lack of reaction. She is the person I like since my youth. Someone I have accompanied my whole life. Even if I returned to 20 years old for me. We were only apart for 2 months. But I have lived for over 70 years. And have struggled in the business world for so long. How could I possibly let a 20-year-old girl see my true emotions? In the past, if I hadn't deliberately gone to places Su X and often visited, I would hardly see her outside of public classes. But now without that thought in mind, it feels even easier to encounter her. This morning I came to the playground as usual, and there were already a few students running. On the rubber track, I placed my thermos in its usual spot, only to find a brand new thermos already there. How strange. Honestly, if I hadn't developed the habit of carrying a thermos for hot water, after turning 30, at 20 a time of youth, I should have been drink soda instead of goji berry tea. After a brief moment of idle thoughts, I put on my Bluetooth earphones and began my morning run. I had just started running on the track and hardly made a round when a white figure flashed past me. I focused carefully, and this back, isn't it Su Xian? During college, I didn't know how many times I had stared at her back. I wouldn't mistake her, but how could she be here running? Although Su Xian also had a habit of morning runs. The truth is, we developed this habit together after we got married. Not long after our wedding, my parents stayed at our place for a while and made us wake up early every day to run and exercise. At first it was a bit too much, but later, we both fell in love with the feeling of running. So even after my parents left, we still kept going for morning runs. Of course, she always complained that I ran too fast, and I complained that she was too slow. It wasn't until we got older and couldn't run anymore that we both gave up running and switched to walking, one in front of the other separated by 2 meters. And now I guess she couldn't sleep and just decided to do it on a whim. I didn't think too much about it and continued my run. After running 6 laps, I finally left the track, slightly out of breath, and slowly walked to where I had put my thermos. I opened the lid and waited for my breathing to stabilize. Before taking a sip, the owner of the other thermos also returned. My gaze traveled from the slender, fair fingers holding the thermos up to her face. Me. I sized her up, and she sized me up. Both of us silent. I felt my lips twitch slightly. Was Su X? I am bewitched. Where was her beloved iced Americano? Why was she using a thermos too? I remembered. When I started focusing on health in my 30s. She scoffed to show her disdain. I just said, when you're lying in a hospital bed in the future, I'll live stream myself raving for you. She sneered, are you sure it'll be raving? And not you just hopping around like a squirrel. But the next day I saw her new thermos, and I couldn't resist teasing her. Aren't you looking down on it? She just curled her lips. To have the strength to poke that squirrel of yours. In the future, this health thing is worth looking forward to. Me. Recalling the past made my teeth itch with hatred. I regretted that. My fighting spirit had always been too weak. As I picked up my thermos and walked around her, I didn't realize something until I had reached the dormitory building. Walked around her. Just now, Su Xian seemed to have taken 2 steps towards me, and I, preoccupied with my own thoughts, subconsciously walked around her, and then left. Oh, what does it matter? I walked around her. So what, today is Thursday, and we only have 2 classes at 10 a.m. The whole school doesn't schedule classes in the afternoon, so that students can participate in club activities. When I was a freshman, I only joined a sign language association, but after going a few times, I lost interest and didn't continue. So I usually spend this time in the library. Li Tao's Photography Association is organizing a trip to Jingming Mountain Park behind the school this week, and he asked if I was interested in joining. I figured I had nothing to do anyway, so I agreed to go. The quickest way to get to the park is to cross the mountain behind the school. The mountain behind the school isn't high, and the slope isn't steep. There's a winding path to walk on. In the end, everyone decided to walk there, through the back mountain. When I saw Su Xian bringing up the rear of the group, I remembered that. She was also a member of the Photography Association, and that she was very skilled in photography. I once found her portfolio in the study, but she never took pictures of me. Li Tao's stamina isn't very good, and we gradually fell behind, from the middle of the group to near the end. Li Tao, your shoelaces are untied again. He's wearing new sneakers today, but the laces seem to be difficult to tie, and they've come undone twice already. Damn it. Li Tao frowned. Why do they keep coming undone? I'm gonna throw these shoes away when I get back. Move aside, I'll show you, I said, crouching down and expertly tying a slip knot. I had bought a pair of shoes, whose laces easily came undone before. Su Xian was the one who impatiently taught me how to tie this kind of secure slip knot. It's quite useful. When I stood up, I found Su Xian standing beside me, looking at me with a slight frown. I didn't know what she was thinking. Joey, she said, calling my name. Is it convenient to add you on WeChat? The line was exactly like when we had our first blind date. She seemed to be fulfilling an obligation. Even the curve of her lips was a perfectly calibrated facade. Mr. Joe, is it convenient to add you on WeChat? But the expression in her eyes was different from back then, with an emotion I didn't quite understand swirling at their depths. I'm sorry. I smiled. Not really. After that, Su Xian had a dark face for the rest of the event. The other classmates didn't dare approach her, but I was familiar with that expression. I had seen it plenty of times over the past 50 years. The only thing I couldn't figure out was why she would suddenly think of asking for my WeChat. Oh, Joey, you're here too. A voice interrupted my thoughts. Everyone was already free to mingle, and I watched as a familiar figure, whom I hadn't seen in years, walk towards me. It was my junior schoolmate, Lian. She was a year younger than Su Xian and me. Went to the same high school, and we met in the student union. Later, she got into the same university, and we would occasionally run into each other on campus. After graduation, her father's company and Su Xian's company had business dealings, so she was a mutual friend who connected me and Su Xian quite a bit. I smiled and greeted her. Junior. What a coincidence. I came with my roommate. I pointed in the direction of Li Tao, who was busy taking photos. Over there, Li Yin nodded, and then made a request. I need a model. Can you be one for me? I thought about how she was still single, holding on to her diamond bachelor status firmly, and couldn't help but tease. Junior, you don't need a model. You need a boyfriend. Don't be a forever alone. Li Yin was a little stunned. How did the conversation go so wrong? She opened her mouth to say something, but was interrupted by a cold voice behind me. What? She's younger than your granddaughter, and you'd still hit on her. Li Yin. Me. I walked around to find Su Xian standing behind me like a ghost. I don't know when she arrived, and the most shocking thing was what she had just said. With a dark expression, she grabbed my wrist and dragged me toward a less crowded area. I didn't resist, just followed her, while trying to sort out the current situation. Could this really be the old Su Xian? But I only came back to being 20 because I died. Was she dead too? She couldn't have died just 2 months after me. Right. But if it wasn't the old Su Xian, how would the 20-year-old Su Xian say something like that? Okay, I can't figure it out. I won't try to. Su Xian only let go of my hand and moved closer when we reached a deserted spot, with a familiar frustration in her eyes. Joe, you pervert me. Why the accusatory words is the first thing you say? Where's your manners? Li Yin is only 21. Your oldest granddaughter is 22. My eyes widened. Damn it. It really is that old woman Su Xian. How did she end up here, instead of living a good life? And what nonsense is she talking about? I couldn't help but retort. I'm only 20. Su Xian scoffed. Age 20 mentality. 78 me. Su Xian's mouth was as annoying as it was in my past life, babbling non-stop. No wonder you ignored me. You should be head over heels for me at this point. But I guess you got bored and wanted to switch to someone else. Wait, I said, my face flushing and my voice rising to cover my guilt. When was I ever head over heels for you? Oh, weren't you? Then how did you find a box in my belongings with a crooked snapshot from graduation, passed off as a photo with me, and it said 4th year of liking me on the back? I was speechless. I did something so foolish back then. Just wanted to keep a memento of my unrequited love that never blossomed. I got seriously ill at the time, and I was hospitalized before I could even destroy the photo. Later I figured even if she saw this secret, it would definitely be after I died. It wouldn't matter then. I wouldn't have to face her. Wouldn't have to worry about being laughed at. Who would have thought things would play out like this? After I died. So embarrassing. I steadied myself, trying to control my voice. Foolishness of youth. Who didn't do stupid things when they were young? To keep her from dwelling on this old history, I proactively changed the subject. How come you like me now? Are you dead? Did you have an accident? Damn it, my family's treasures. Have lost 2 relatives in 2 months. Hearing my question, Su Xian's eyes flickered. Unlike her barrage of output just now, she was as quiet as a quail. I knew if she didn't want to talk, there was no forcing her. I frowned and changed the question again. How did you know it was me? This question was obviously easier to answer. She smiled contemptuously. Your morning jogging habit. Your ever-present thermos. The way you tie your shoelaces, and Li Yan. That naive simpleton. Those are all things that came about after you married. Mimi, okay. She remembers the details pretty clearly. Me, when did you arrive? Su Xian replied. The night before I ran into you in the cafeteria. That morning, I was checking your class schedule. The anomalies in Su Xian's behavior. Since that day flashed through my mind. I wasn't oblivious. But at the time, I couldn't connect it to the possibility that she, too, had returned to this period. I have to say, what a sin. It really is a sin. It's not that only I can be reborn and Su Xian can't. But couldn't they arrange for her to be reborn into a different phase? Just not with me. At the same time, Su Xian asked me to add her on WeChat. I flatly refused. She couldn't understand and insisted on knowing why. I sighed and said sincerely, Su Xing, haven't you thought about it? Since we're restarting our lives, we can make different choices than we did in the last life, like choosing not to be involved in each other's lives. Hearing this, Su Xian's body stiffened, and even her expression froze. Before we got together without love, and ended up arguing our whole lives. Clearly we're not suitable partners for each other. Maybe we'll have better outcomes if we leave each other. Isn't that right? After I finished speaking, I nodded lightly to her and prepared to leave. But she grabbed my wrist the moment I turned. The warmth of her palm traveled through our touching skin, and my fingers curled slightly. Su Xian looked at me. Her eyes seemed to hold moisture, and even her tone seemed to contain grievance. But when you liked me, I didn't even know you existed. Your liking, while I knew nothing, only lasted for 4 years. After the marriage, you always hated me. Her voice lowered, almost a murmur. Stop liking, turn into hating. It's all the same. Su Xian slowly released her grip. Looking at her so lost, I felt a faint sharp pain in my heart. My feet were like they were nailed to the spot, unable to move. Her shoulders slumped, as if her whole body had lost its support. Someone who had always been so proud now looked so dejected and heartbreaking. I wanted to open my mouth to explain, but I felt that the more I said, the more complicated the relationship would become. Perhaps this way it was easier to truly sever ties. I stood still for a moment, and then finally turned to leave. I didn't see Su Xian for quite a long time after that. She really seemed to have done as I said, and no longer appeared in my life. But surely that didn't mean skipping even public classes. She really had no fear of failing. I felt helpless, but I could only let it be, and we would each live our own lives well. Time slipped quietly to the end of the year, and our city welcomed the first snow on Christmas Day. The snowflakes fell lightly and gracefully, matching the joyful atmosphere of Christmas, adding a touch of special romance to the night. My roommate and I returned from a stroll outside, and a thin layer of snow already covered the school road, with many messy footprints on it. I couldn't help but recall one winter, after our marriage, when the snow was even thicker than now, and our 2 families had arranged to have dinner together, because the hotel was not far from home. Su Xian and I walked there. My alcohol tolerance wasn't very good, but the atmosphere was so good that night that I couldn't help but have a few extra drinks. By the time dinner was over and everyone was going home, I could barely stand, and was leaning entirely on Su Xian. To prove that I wasn't drunk, I stubbornly pushed her away, and said I would walk in a straight line to show her. I had only taken a few steps before I sprained my ankle. Su Xian could only help me home with a dark expression. The journey wasn't actually far, but I leaned on her thin frame, savoring every second of it. On the left side of the road were dazzling shops, with neon lights flashing and bustling with activity. On the right side were lamps emitting warm light, quietly illuminating our way home. Su Xian supported me, leaving a string of footprints in the snow. Her shoulder gave me so much peace of mind, and I pressed my face against her warm neck. Feeling a bit sleepy, Su Xian hissed, "Qiao Yi, be a decent human being. I'm struggling to support you, and you're icing me with your face." Something landed on my face and melted. Cool and refreshing. I looked up at the night sky, where snowflakes were falling lightly. I ignored her words and just said distractively, "Su Xian, it's snowing. So can you not drink next time? How many ankles do you have to sprain?" I giggled. "When the snow gets heavier, you'll turn into a little old woman. I'll also become an old man. That would be like walking from youth to old age together." Su exclaimed, "This stretch of road, I can finish it before the snow gets any heavier." Me? Is this woman allergic to romance? Thinking about it carefully, it could be considered that my wish came true, and Su Xian and I really did grow old together. When we arrived at the dormitory building, we found a crowd gathered there. Li Tao excitedly pulled the three of us into the crowd, wanting to be at the forefront of the gossip. I instantly felt a jolt, and a sense of foreboding rose in my heart. How could I have forgotten this? In my past life, I had experienced a public embarrassment, which was being publicly confessed to by a girl from the same school. For people who are mutually in love, that is naturally a precious and touching memory. But for me, who had already clearly rejected the other party, I found this kind of public confession very embarrassing, and even felt offended. She was only moved by herself, but put me in a difficult position. If I didn't want to go against my will to accept her, I would have to endure some people standing on the moral high ground and morally blackmailing me. A path opened in the crowd, and I clearly saw the exact same confession scene as in my past life. The other person had arranged candles in a heart shape and was holding a bouquet of roses in the center. Her eyes lit up when she saw me appear, but I couldn't help but want to curse. That person quickly walked up to me, happily wanting to take my hand, but I frowned in resistance and took 2 steps back. Her smile faltered, and she quickly thrust the roses into my hands. "Joey, I really like you. Will you be my boyfriend?" As soon as the confession was out, cheers erupted around us. My roommates saw my expression and knew I wasn't willing, quickly dispersing the crowd around us. "What are you all yelling about? You're shouting yes so loudly. Why don't you go be with him?" A hint of pleading surfaced in the girl's eyes, and she called out my name stubbornly. "Joey," just as I was about to seriously refuse. A warm, strong hand enveloped mine. I turned my head. It was Su Xian wearing a white down jacket. At that moment, she lacked the cold aloofness that others saw in her. Instead, she was staring icily at the girl confessing to me, as if she wanted to tear her apart. "Get lost, don't bother him again," the girl retorted, unwilling to back down. "Who are you? Why should I get lost?" Su Xian raised my hand, which she was holding, and said through gritted teeth, word by word, "He's my boyfriend. We have children. We have grandchildren, everyone." Oh no, has this once famous beauty suffered some kind of mental breakdown? I shuddered all over, completely forgetting my anger, just staring at her in horror. "Su Xian, do you even hear what you're saying? Have you really lost it? You're such an old soul, and you're getting this worked up by a little girl." My vision blurred. I just wanted the world to end. I quickly tugged at Su Xian's hand, signaling her to stop saying such shocking things. Su Xian spared me a glance, took a deep breath, and slowly added, "I mean, we'll have them in the future. Everyone. False alarm, false alarm." She's still saying. My roommate gave me a meaningful look, and I shook my head violently. "It's not me, I'm not doing it. Don't get any ideas." I don't know what triggered Su Xian, but after that night, she started appearing in front of me frequently again. She couldn't add me on WeChat, so she somehow found my phone number. She sent me text messages from time to time, not caring whether I replied or not, just happily sending them. She also had my class schedule, so when she didn't have class, she liked to come and take my classes with me, and I couldn't get rid of her. In the end, I just ignored her, letting her do whatever she wanted, figuring that after a while, this young master would get bored and give up. Amidst my roommates' increasingly ambiguous glances, all my explanations were like farts in the wind, so I stopped bothering to explain. This indulgence went on for over half a month. We finished our final exams and started our winter vacation to go home for the new year. Our homes weren't in the same city. It would take a 2.5-hour flight and a half-hour bus ride to get back. Su Xian's route home was the same as mine, So she brazenly followed me all the way. I sensed a great change in her, compared to the previous life, but I didn't understand why she was being so clingy with me now. Maybe she didn't feel a sense of belonging in this reborn world and felt uneasy. So on the bus, I said seriously to her who was sitting next to me, "We're really back. This isn't just my world, it's your world too. You should do what you want to do, what you should do. You don't have to revolve around me all the time." There was a moment of silence. "Don't you understand yet?" Su Xian looked at me with her dark eyes, a little troubled and confused. "How much more obvious do I have to be for you to know that? I don't want to become strangers with you. I don't want my life to be without your participation. Even if we argue all the time like in the previous life, I don't want to let you go. I never want to build an emotional connection with anyone. Because I wanted to keep listening. Because this was the first time Su Xian had revealed herself to me. I felt like I was slowly approaching there, hidden deep within my heart. But the next moment, I only heard a scream followed by violent shaking. Before I could react to what was happening, Su Xian had already jumped in front of me and hugged me tightly. The bus's tilting caused luggage of all sizes to fall from the overhead racks, some hitting sulfuric acid. I only heard a muffled groan. Finally, the shaking stopped, but the inside of the bus was still, filled with a cacophony of sounds. I opened my eyes and saw only darkness. I couldn't suppress the fear in my heart and cried out Su Xian's name. I knew she was beside me, but I was terrified because I couldn't see how she was. My wrist felt like it had been cut by broken glass, throbbing faintly, and there was some sticky liquid. After a while, I felt the person on top of me move, as if enduring immense pain. She gently reassured me. "I'm okay." Hearing the familiar voice, tears streamed down my face. I asked her in a hoarse voice, "How are you? Are you hurt?" "I'm all right." She gasped slightly, and then I felt a soft kiss on the top of my head. "Don't worry." I reached out in the darkness to try and feel her face, but when I touched the back of her head, my palm was wet. "Su Xian." My hands were trembling. "You're bleeding a lot." There was a lot of noise coming from outside the bus. I vaguely heard people trying to rescue us. It seemed like the bus had suddenly encountered a ground collapse during the journey, and half of the bus body had sunk in. Su Xian and I were sitting in the front row, so we were more affected. "If you don't fuss, I won't hurt so much." She hugged me weakly with one arm, as if using all her strength to comfort me. "Really? So don't cry, okay?" I bit my lower lip hard, desperately suppressing my sobs. Clutching her clothes tightly, she asked in a low voice, "Are you hurt anywhere?" My nose kept tingling. I was afraid my voice would betray my emotions, so I wanted to pause before answering. Su Xian didn't hear my immediate response, and her voice became anxious. "Are you hurt? Where are you hurt?" She moved her body, trying to check on me with her hand, but she seemed to have pulled something, and gasped in pain. I sensed her anxiety and said in a hoarse voice, "I'm okay. Don't move." More tears flowed. "Why were you so foolish?" Shielding me. Su Xian even managed to chuckle at this moment. "What if I scared you, you old man?" After a moment of silence, her voice sounded again, filled with sobs. "If I scared you to death, I'm afraid I wouldn't have the same luck to find you again." When I woke up in the hospital, my parents were already waiting by my bed. I basically only had bruises and cuts from the broken glass, but they weren't serious and had already been bandaged. Having experienced such a terrifying scene, and then seeing my parents, who had passed away many years ago, standing so realistically in front of me. At this moment, the moment I saw them, my nose tingled and tears welled up. Mom and Dad comforted me. "It's all right, son. You're okay now." I remembered Su Xian and asked them in a hoarse voice, "Where's Su Xian?" Mom and Dad were stunned for a moment and asked, "Who's Su Xian?" I realized that they didn't know Su Xian at this point. So, I anxiously tried to get out of bed to ask the nurse. Seeing this, Mom quickly helped me. "Son, where are you going?" I replied urgently. "The girl who came back with me. She protected me when the accident happened." Later, I learned from the nurse that Su Xian had been assigned to another single room, 5 rooms away from mine. Because my own injuries weren't serious, my parents didn't stop me from looking for her. They just followed behind to watch over me. When I arrived at Su Xian's hospital room, the nurse was just removing her old foredrip and replacing it with a new one. I saw Su Xian's father was also in the room. I subconsciously walked in and called out, "Dad." Su Xian's father turned back, looking at me with a confused expression. My parents also question marked me. Almost the instant the word left my mouth, I realized where I went wrong, but I could only awkwardly blush and correct myself. Uncle, hello, I'm Su Xian's classmate Joey. I'm here to see her. Su Xian's father looked at the patient's gown I was wearing, and then realization dawned on him. You and Xian were on that bus. I nodded, because Su Xian had protected me, preventing me from being more seriously injured. My parents, filled with gratitude, started chatting with Su Xian's father, while I stayed by Su Xian's side. She was seriously injured, having been hit by heavy objects multiple times. Besides some abrasions, she had a head injury on the back of her head and 2 broken ribs. She hadn't woken up since being admitted to the hospital. It wasn't until the early hours of the 3rd day that Su Xian's father, unable to stay awake any longer, went home to rest. And especially, hired caregiver was also sound asleep nearby. I couldn't sleep, so I quietly went to Su Xian's room to see her again. Not long after, I saw her slowly wake up. The room was dark, but the light from the street lights outside illuminated the room, bringing some light. After waking up, Su Xian stared at me for a few seconds, then revealed a smile, her eyes full of overflowing gentleness. I let go of her hand that I was holding, got up, and poured her a cup of warm water and fed it to her. How are you feeling? She shook her head, indicating that she was all right, but still smiling, staring at me with unwavering eyes. What are you grinning about? Su Xian's lips slightly curved up, her voice a bit hoarse, but unable to hide the joy in her heart. There's never been a moment like waking up, and you being right here by my side. That makes me feel more at ease. This was the first time I had ever heard Su Xian say something like this, like a confession to me. In that instant, I felt like an innocent child experiencing first love, and I blushed uncontrollably. When you first passed away, I felt like the world was so quiet that I couldn't seem to hear anything. I paused for a moment. That was something I didn't know about Su Xian's life alone. After I passed away, I felt like life had become so boring, just sitting there blankly all day, looking at the things you left behind. Have you heard of Mandarin duck fate? I've heard that for couples with Mandarin duck fate, if one of them passes away, the other won't live long either. Su Xian's hand covered the back of my hand, and she let out a soft laugh. Joe, I seem to be like that too. My body was clearly fine, but 2 months later, I lay down on the side of the bed you always slept on, and followed you. I sniffed, my mind filled with images of the lonely back of the elderly Sui exit. I turned my head away. Then, why didn't you want to see me one last time back then? Su Xian revealed a wry smile. I always felt that if I didn't see you, you would be so angry that you wouldn't be willing to leave like that. But you still left me. I felt a little helpless. That's not something I could control. If Yama wants me dead by midnight, could I insist on living until dawn? The moment I confirmed that I had been reborn and returned to the age of 20, I eagerly wanted to find you. But when I saw you the next day, whether in the cafeteria or in the classroom, you didn't have any special reaction. I was a little disappointed. It seemed like you hadn't returned to the age of 20. Like me, but soon. I noticed some of your actions that made me suspect. You were deliberately pretending not to recognize me. I didn't plan to reveal everything so quickly that day, but when I saw you acting like a stranger to me, laughing and chatting with others, my heart felt blocked, suffocated. I desperately wanted to tear away your facade, to prove that there was a connection between us. But that day, I told her, we shouldn't participate in each other's lives, realizing that you didn't want to have any involvement with me in this lifetime. I genuinely considered just doing as you wished. But she paused. I don't think I can go back to not caring like before. That Christmas night, when you received the confession, I finally understood that since I couldn't let you go, I could only try my best to hold on to you. Realizing I had been silent, she gently shook my finger. Hey, I've said so much. You should at least give me some reaction. Right. What reaction should I give? Want some more water? I asked. Su Xian widened her eyes in annoyance. That's it, I said weakly. The plot twist is too big. I haven't sorted it out yet. Su Xian sighed. Joey, I never wanted to touch love and relationships. And I definitely didn't want to develop emotional bonds with anyone. You know, my parents divorced a long time ago. I saw them in love, and I also saw them resent each other after the love was gone. At that time, I felt that people's hearts are the most fickle. You can't control when they love deeply and when they stop loving. So not touching love is the easiest way, and also the most likely way to avoid pain. A business marriage is good. There's no need to give your heart. But we can both maximize our interests. Meeting you is also good. The dislike you showed me took away my burden, allowing me to relax and interact with you, and even release my various emotions, without any worries. We had children just like you. Later the children grew up, started their own families, and had their own children. I truly felt that I had lived a smooth and satisfying life, everything developing as I had imagined. Except, she paused for several seconds before speaking again. I never thought that one day you would leave before me. You being in my life felt as natural as breathing air. I bickered and argued with you my whole life, but I really never wanted to be separated from you. I admit I don't know how to love, but if I could do it again, I want to learn properly. Is that okay? After saying that, Su Xian stopped speaking, simply gazing at me quietly. I knew she was waiting for my answer. After a long silence, I finally spoke slowly. The day you said, my liking for you only lasted for 4 years. That's not true. Su Xian, I smiled. I loved you for most of my life, knowing your aversion to love, and understanding that if I followed my heart and openly treated you well, it would only push you further away. Every time I inadvertently revealed my concern, it would make your sensitive heart wary. I thought for a long time, and it seemed that making you think I didn't love you was the most comfortable way for you. Actually, we're the same. I hid my concern in day-to-day, feigned disdain. She hid her softness in every act of bluffing. I have the same feeling as Su Xian. Life in the previous life was actually pretty good, compared to others who only saw her excellent, but cold side. She showed me more of her personality, with rich emotions, and that was a complete Su Xian. I feel that although I didn't enter Su Xian's heart, no one else distanced us from each other. She still bore me children, and created a complete family, and I still stayed by her side until the end of life. The reason I said we shouldn't be involved in each other's lives anymore is because I feel like I failed to truly open your heart. In our past life, maybe without me in this life, you'll meet someone more suitable, someone who will change your perspective on love and make you happier. But Joey, Su Xian said softly, you've already changed me, without even realizing it, during those long years of companionship. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh and stopped arguing with her. All right, life is long and short. In the blink of an eye, I've been with Su Xian for a lifetime. I grew up in love and understand that love is about giving, understanding, and companionship. Su Xian lacked love growing up and didn't know how to love others. Looking back now, it seems Su Xian's love wasn't necessarily shallower than mine. We were just a fortune teller and a late bloomer. If I really didn't get reborn, and I was just a regular 20-year-old, what would you do? Su Xian replied without hesitation. Chase, if I catch you, it's a win. I frowned in disgust. You're 78 years old. Su Xian retorted. That's just a state of mind. Do you understand state of mind? You can think of it as mature and steady. My actual age is only 20. Aren't we a great match? I recalled the things she scolded me with that day. Me, TCH, playing double standards like a pro. All right. I suddenly remembered the first time I visited Su Xian in the hospital, and I said, a little embarrassed, I saw your dad, and blurred out dad without thinking. And my parents were right behind me. They must have misunderstood after that. After hearing me, Su Xian laughed for a good while, only slightly calming down, when her chest started to ache, looking at me with a smile. Is it still a misunderstanding now? I was stunned for a few seconds before leaning in and kissing her forehead. No, not anymore. Winter break was only a month long. After returning to school, Su Xian took another 3 months to fully recover. When the people in the dorm saw us holding hands, they couldn't help but tease. You worked so hard to explain things back then. What was there to explain? What you see is what you get. Okay, I won't struggle anymore. Anyway, the result wasn't different. 2 years later, when taking graduation photos in our senior year, even though we had already taken many group photos, she insisted on dragging me to the same spot where I had secretly photographed her years ago to take another picture. The difference was that our positions were reversed, and this time she was the one taking the secret photo. On the back of that Polaroid, she wrote a sentence. Spring breeze 10 miles, but you are better. It was like crossing the gaps of time and the long river of years. A distant but passionate response to that. Unspoken love from many years ago, endearingly persistent. After graduation photos, we officially started our internships. Because we had so many years of experience from our past life, both Su Xian and I were entrusted with important tasks. When we returned to our respective companies, I told you, the 9-to-5 grind will always exist in different ways. Both of our family's companies started at 9:30, but our parents required us to arrive by 8:00. We're a truly unfortunate pair of lovebirds. On the first day of Su X Science 22nd year, the weather was great, and we both slack off from work and went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get our marriage certificate. I really didn't think Su Xian would be so impatient, but I couldn't resist her persistent pleas, and I succumbed. In just a few days before getting the certificate, I couldn't help but tease myself. I got married without even dating in my past life, and I'm getting married after only dating once. In this life, and it's with the same person. Pretty monotonous. Then Su Xian dragged me to bed and gave me a thorough lesson, repeatedly asking me, is it still monotonous? Not monotonous, it's pretty good. Simple love, simple happiness. Emerging from the Civil Affairs Bureau, we each held a small red booklet in our hands. Xin made me give her both marriage certificates to keep, carefully placing them in her inner pocket. Su Xian hums a song while driving, stopping at a red light. Do you remember when you said before that we could restart our lives and make different choices than in our previous life? I glanced at her and said leisurely, what? Regretting making the same choice now? No, I was just thinking. She took advantage of the time before the light changed to quickly peck me on the lips. We had 2 kids in our last life. We got married 4 years earlier this life. How about having another one? Me? What kind of thought process is that? Su Xian was in high spirits. Look at how good our genes are. It'd be a waste not to have more. Me, hey. Su X seen as promising young people. We must actively respond to the call of the nation. Me. Go ahead and have one. It's not like we can't afford it. Su X seen nicely love you. My face flushed, I turned my head to look out the window, unable to suppress the slight upward curve of my lips. Yeah, love you too. From the past to the present and to the future. The end.